Yeah, we're great to see everybody back. I hope you had a good discussion there. We've asked you to put up your feedback on the chat from each of your rooms if you've got feedback on that one. But we have a couple of questions, and I'm going to maybe turn to Mary with one or two of them. One of the things that came up in the room I was in, Mary, was the question: how did COVID? What happened in COVID, and how did you adapt to reflect that different reality?
Okay, so tradition, as I said, in the COVID, there was two parts to COVID. There was the prior to I suppose the June, where student teachers actually the whole block was cancelled. And out of a 10-week block, they had actually completed 3 weeks of a block of placement. So our students upload all of their resources, all of their lesson plans, everything online. So we had a repository, I suppose, of 3 weeks work. And then we designed alternative assessments around those, what they had up. So we had 4 online reflective discussions with them, where they had to choose different lessons, talk us through the lessons, how they had taught them, what resources they had used, how the children had reacted to them, and what they would do differently now. They had to respond, as I said, to forum posts and give examples, and they had to respond to each other's forum posts. So if somebody posted something, they had to show how they had also either reflected on that or added to it, or disagreed with it. And we had, so that was kind of one scenario. We have a scenario now, as I said, where the students are out in placement, but we as tutors are not able to be out. So again, we have the platform, the VLE platform allows us, so I could literally go into Hibernia now, go to Mary Kelly, who's down in Wexford, and know exactly what she has taught all day today. So we have a really good, rich repository of what they're doing, because they upload everything that they have, all of their resources. And what we're doing then is, again, we have reflective discussions where they have a Zoom call with a school placement tutor. The school placement tutor asks them to take them through the lessons for the day. And let's say, for example, it was an art lesson. And the tutor would then ask, well, show me what piece of clay they made. So the student has to bring examples of the work. They have to bring examples of what the children have done. They have to show their assessments, how they've assessed the work. So it's a really kind of, I suppose, an interrogation. I was on one of them the other day, and I thought, oh my God, this is like being interrogated by somebody. But really, very, very detailed, down to, what did child X do and what did child Y do and what would you do differently? So that's really how, obviously observation is key, and we'd love to be out in schools, but in the absence of that, that's one. And then the other piece, I suppose, that we're doing around it, just to get a sense of the student, is we're adding, one of the visits is where the student actually has to teach with their peers. So they're in groups of 6 and they have to present the lesson. So it gives us some sense of that student's presence, their communication, their questioning, all of those things. So we're having to balance in a really difficult situation. And I suppose we need to be mindful that we want the students to progress and we need them to graduate, but we have to be able to stand over the quality of them as well. So it's a real balance at the moment.
It's very comprehensive, and that's something that a number of the questioners here have raised. It's a very comprehensive. There's a lot of different assessment, a breadth of assessment methods being used across a variation in some settings, with a lot of assessors and different teaching contexts. And the question was raised is, how do you ensure coherence and consistency across that? One of the questioners here is raising the question about resourcing of that. That must take a lot of resources to do that one. Do you have any comment on that?
And I suppose it does. And, as I said in the group, it is our bread and butter. It's what we have been doing for 20 years. So we have built up a lot of experience. We use, our, I suppose, adjunct faculty as tutors, and we do invest a huge amount of time and energy in the training of those people. We have the templates, the resources, the frameworks. I've been on just last kind of Thursday and Friday. I myself just moderated about 5 of those calls. So we have that consistent quality assurance. If I had a difficulty with that tutor felt they would, you know, I would pick up the phone to them. We do a lot of that kind of individual training. Training is really key to ensuring, you know, and obviously you don't always get, it's not an exact science, but you do have to invest. We have the structures then, whereas I said, we have a head of school placement, we have an academic team, and then we have our adjunct faculty, and then we have a very, I suppose, you know, good administrative support and VLE support behind it. So it is resource intensive, but if 40 credits out of the 120 are, you know, assessed in this way, I suppose for us, we have to ensure that that quality is there, and we have to be able to stand over the program and stand over what we're doing, and know that, you know, like the students who are graduating are fit for the role and are good, and you know, and we want them to be the best teachers they can be. So I suppose that is a drive. We're passionate about that.
One of the things that I picked up, Mary, in your presentation was this training of tutors, and you threw it in as one line. I was just wondering, in terms of how do you do it? What does that involve? Is that a challenge? Has that been a challenge to get people to a point to be able to assess?
Not hugely. So in the main, we invest in the recruitment of them. So we interview everybody. We use people who have been teachers. In fact, all of them have been teachers. We bring them together. So in any given training session, we will go through feedback forms. We will ask them to, you know, mark the feedback forms. We might show them a video, student teacher, ask them to grade the student. We have a lot of, I suppose, community of practice, reflective discussions. We go through, we spent a lot of time around the feedback. So, you know, people sometimes can loosely write, you know, a very good lesson. Now, if a student sees very good lesson, they're expecting a grade in the 70s. So we really worked hard on making sure that they use the language of grade descriptors, that they understand the learning outcomes, that they understand what we're looking for. So we have we have a tutor placement handbook. So within those criteria that I showed you, professionalism, planning, preparation, we have those broken down in detail as to what somebody would expect to see in a very good student, in a good student, in a satisfactory, in an unsatisfactory. So we've done a lot of work around defining and trying to, I suppose, put all of those things in a comprehensive way that somebody really can pick up and say, you know, yes, that's what I saw. And we give feedback to people if we, you know, when we're moderating, if we get to come across feedback forms that have, you know, used excellent, 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 and the students got 50, we will go back to that tutor and say, look, you know, you need to use, like, so we've a lot of toing and froing, a lot of work with our tutors to ensure that. And I think it's really important to invest in that, because that, you know, it lessens appeals, it lessens reviews, it lessens the students, and you don't get it all right, because obviously it can be a subjective experience, but we've tried to make it as evidence-based as we possibly can.
We've had a bit of feedback from a couple of rooms. I'd like to compliment, I think Jason in room 13, his hand is going to fall off. I'm just after seeing a big long thing arriving in. One of the things that arose, I'm looking here at room 5, was the assessment of values and dispositions as a challenge, you know, and then it rose across a number of different areas. I just wonder, has that been hard to do? Or you talk a lot about reflection, obviously assessing that, and it's very much embedded in the program, but do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, and look, that is, for any professional program, that is the difficult one. How do you, and I think it presents itself in lots of ways. It presents itself in how prepared somebody is for their lesson. So, you know, if I've gone to the trouble to have my resources, to have thought about the curriculum, have thought about the lesson plans that I'm planning, have thought about the individual children, that shows already, you know, a disposition to being a professional who's ready. We do, I mean, we talk to students even around how they present themselves in schools, in terms of their dress code, the way they are ready. We talk to them about, you know, being in school a half an hour before the day starts, being there half an hour, being there is helpful, you know, and we get that kind of feedback tends to come from the school-based, you know, if somebody was turning up late or whatever, you know, principal might pick up the phone and say, look, I'm not really happy. So we have a good relationship with our partners, our school partners as well, insofar as we get some feedback on those things that aren't as obvious when it comes to a visit. And that's why it's important, I think, while we don't ask them to assess them, we always have that conversation. How are they getting on? How are they? And that's, in that conversation is where you will hear an awful lot of those kind of values, dispositions, how prepared the student is. And we do mark the planning, preparation and professionalism, and we give that a mark on the form, and we give that a comment on the form. So we make it clear to students that we have expectations around the standards and the way that they interact in schools and interact with staff. So we do a lot of work on them. I suppose we're lucky and maybe fortunate in that it's a postgraduate program. So, we are dealing with people who really want this qualification because they want to be teaching. So if that can be, but we're very open, I think, with students around those pieces. And I think, from the beginning, we expect, those kind of standards to be met, so that they know that.
Mary, thank you very, very much for taking all those questions.